The final cut is a masterpiece. But the first draft is a war zone. This is between the frames. The roar of flames, the whistle of arrows, the thunder of horses. Gladiator opens not with dialogue, but with devastation. In just over 7 minutes, we meet Maximus, Decimus, Meridius, as a general, a leader, and a warrior. This battle sequence is now studied in film schools for its pacing, scale, and emotional grounding. It's the brutal, beautiful foundation upon which an entire epic is built. But what if I told you that this iconic opening almost didn't exist? That the version of Gladiator screened for early test audiences began not on a battlefield, but in a stable, and that the sequence that defines Maximus was stitched together from second unit footage, reshoots without the lead actor, and sheer editorial desperation. This is the story of how an edit room saved an epic. To understand the miracle of the opening battle, you have to understand the movie that existed before it. The original script by David Franzone began not with the Germanic War, but with Maximus already returning to Rome, a conquering hero. Director Ridley Scott and editor Pietro Scalia followed this structure for the first assembly cut. On paper, it made sense. Start with the triumph, then introduce the political intrigue that leads to his downfall. So, they put this version in front of a test audience. The lights came up, and the feedback was brutal, confused, disconnected, underwhelmed. Audience members were asking, who is this Maximus guy? They saw him celebrated, then betrayed, but they didn't feel the sting of it. His fall from grace, the central tragedy of the film, felt hollow because the audience had never seen the grace from which he fell. The emotional weight of his journey from general to slave to gladiator was missing its anchor. The studio executives panicked. The release date was locked, a massive marketing campaign was already in motion, and their epic felt emotionally flat. Ridley Scott saw the problem instantly. The fatal flaw was simple. They hadn't shown Maximus at the height of his power and his element. The audience needed to see him not just as a man who was told he was great, but as a brilliant, respected, and feared commander leading his men into the jaws of hell. The solution was obvious but seemed impossible. They needed a battle, a massive, visceral battle, and they needed it fast, with the release date looming like an executioner's axe. The biggest problem, their star Russell Crowe was long gone. He'd finished his work on Gladiator and was already committed to another film, thousands of miles away. How do you shoot a battle sequence centered on your main character when your main character is UNT there? The answer was found in the cutting room, in a process of what can only be described as editorial salvage. The pivotal mechanism was turning scraps into a symphony. Editor Pietro Scalia and Ridley Scott dove into the raw footage, looking for anything they could use. What they had was hours and hours of material shot by the second unit director, Alexander Witt. This footage was never intended to be a standalone sequence. It was B-roll background action, wide shots of armies clashing, stuntmen locked in combat, catapults launching fireballs, archers letting loose volleys. It was chaos, but it was authentic chaos. What they didn't have was the heart of the sequence. Close-ups of Maximus leading the charge, reacting to the chaos, being the calm center of the storm. So the frantic puzzle building began. First, they combed through every frame of footage for usable shots of Crowe, no matter how brief, but it wasn't enough. So they turned to his stunt double, who suddenly became the star of the show. Scalia masterfully used shots of the double from behind, his face obscured by a helmet, or in extreme wide shots where you couldn't tell the difference. He was a silhouette against the fire, a figure on horseback in the distance, a ghost of Maximus, but enough to sell the illusion. Then, months later, they managed to get Russell Crowe for a single day on a soundstage in London. Against a green screen, he filmed a handful of crucial close-ups, Maximus touching the soil, looking to the heavens, shouting commands, reacting to the carnage. These isolated shots were then meticulously composited into the battle footage, like transplanting a heart into a body that had already been built. But the real glue that held this patchwork quilt together was the sound design, the relentless, overwhelming soundscaper clash of steel. The screams of the dying, the roar of fire, the percussive score. It does more than just create atmosphere. It masks the visual seams. It's an auditory assault that distracts you from noticing that you're not always seeing the star. Scalia cut the sequence not for continuity, but for rhythm and impact. He used jarring, quick cuts, shaky camera movements, and visceral impacts to create a sense of sensory overload. You don't watch the battle, you experience it. The pace is so relentless that you don't have time to question the logic or look for flaws. You're just trying to survive it, right alongside the soldiers. It's a masterclass in using pace to overwhelm perfection. This editorial improvisation didn't just fill a narrative gap, it fundamentally redefined the film's language and its legacy. This wasn't just action for action's sake. It was character through action. We see Maximus touch the earth of his battlefield, a quiet prayer to his ancestors, establishing his connection to the land and tradition. We see him walk through the ranks, sharing a moment with his men, showing he's a leader who inspires loyalty, not just fear. He fights alongside them, not from a distant hill. These moments, stitched together in the edit, tell us everything we need to know about his honor, his humility, and his prowess. He is the reluctant warrior who wants to go home, but is devastatingly good at his job. This gritty, brutal opening also set the film's tone. It immediately separated Gladiator from the clean, stately historical epics of Hollywood's past. This was going to be a dirty, bloody, and painfully real story. It's no surprise that Pietro Scalia won the Academy Award for Best Editing. His work on this sequence is a powerful testament to the idea of the editor as a co-author, someone who can literally rewrite a film's DNA and rescue it from mediocrity. It also highlights the unsung heroes of filmmaking, the second unit team who shot the beautiful carnage, the VFX artists who seamlessly blended worlds, and the sound designers who composed the symphony of war. They didn't just save a scene, they built an epic from its fragments. So what's the real legacy here? It's a powerful principle for any creator. Solve for emotion, not just for coverage. Scott and Scalia didn't have the perfect shots to tell their story logically, but they had a crystal clear emotional goal: make the audience understand Maximus' greatness so they could truly feel the tragedy of his loss. When your initial plan falls apart, the key is to refocus on the core emotional experience you want to deliver. Sometimes the missing piece isn't more footage or a bigger budget, it's the right rhythm, the perfect sound, or a bold juxtaposition of images. The most memorable moments in art are often born not from perfect, preordained plans, but from inventive, desperate, and brilliant salvage. What other iconic movie scenes do you know of that were actually saved in the edit room? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Between the Frames.